Убивцы! Охрана хочет! Это не полиция!
39-year-old tech entrepreneur Areg Shepikin, who posted critical comments about ethnic Chechens and Islam on social media, was abducted in broad daylight from a central Moscow railway station on Tuesday. Videos shared on social media showed several bearded men in suits carrying Shepikin out of the Yaroslavsky station concourse and into the trunk of an SUV before driving off as witnesses and security personnel watched on. The Moscow police said its transportation unit had launched an investigation into the videos showing unlawful acts against the person. In Monday's expletive-laden Instagram post, Shepikin railed against Chechens and Islam by saying offensive words. The Telegram channel Baza, which has purported links to Russia's security services, claimed Shepikin was abducted minutes after posting one of his latest videos, which it said may have allowed the alleged kidnappers to identify his location. Another Telegram channel, Shot, reported that authorities stopped the SUV in which Shepikin was placed later that night, but that he was no longer in the vehicle. According to Shot, 3 of the alleged kidnappers identified themselves to police officers as active members of the National Guard who were carrying out an operative procedure. The men were seen exiting a police station on Wednesday morning, one of whom uttered the Chechen rallying cry Akhmat Sila, Akhmat Power, or Akhmat Rules, as they boarded the SUV, according to video shared by Shot. Ahmed Dudayev, Chechnya's Information and National Policy Minister, on Wednesday said that Shepikin was not abducted, but detained by law enforcement officers who cooperate with authorities in Moscow. He claimed Shepikin's Instagram posts could qualify as several criminal offenses, including offending the feelings of religious believers and the justification of Nazism. Dudayev accused media outlets of deliberately misidentifying Shepikin as a victim and defended his kidnapping by invoking Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In a country that's conducting a special military operation against Nazism, justifying and defending Nazism is a double crime, Dudayev wrote on Telegram. Shepikin had published photographs of himself with several Russian political figures and celebrities, including Russia's chief negotiator at peace talks with Ukraine and Turkey, Vladimir Medinsky. The kidnapping is consistent with the abduction and disappearance of critics of the Chechen authorities, said lawyer and head of the human rights group Crew Against Torture, Sergei Babanets. Later on Wednesday, Baza reported that Shepikin was released around midnight and spent the night at a local hostel. The Moscow Times was unable to immediately verify that report. Images of Shepikin released Wednesday show him with a bruised face and walking with a limp. Our comment on this story is that the Russians are getting exactly what they deserve. Putin invaded Ukraine under the pretext of fighting Nazism and protecting the Russian-speaking population. In the process, he has killed or wounded nearly 1 million citizens of the Russian Federation. He has also destroyed towns and homes in the very regions he seeks to capture. Today, the greatest devastation in Ukraine is found in the territories annexed by Russia. But the greatest irony is that Putin's strongest supporters are now the Chechens, led by Kadyrov, whose country Putin once also devastated. While the Moscow dictator dreams of capturing Kiev, Chechen thugs are slowly taking over Moscow. They're dominating real estate, drug, and prostitution rings, and are gradually becoming the real bosses in Russia. In this story, we see Chechen military personnel abducting Russians in broad daylight, only to be triumphantly released later by the police. The moral of the story: what goes around, comes around. Mr. Putin, you are driving Russia into the abyss, but maybe that's a good thing for the world. And we have new info regarding the Ukrainian Operation Spider's Web. Russia planned Operation Zeus's Lightning, largest ever cruise missile attack on all of Ukraine for the night of June 1st, to force Ukraine's hand at Istanbul the next day. Ukrainian drones destroyed many of these very bombers, already fueled, hours before they were to take off. Experts note that such logistical and aviation activity has not been observed since 2021. Western analysts agree that Russia is accumulating strike potential to launch a coordinated attack on key Ukrainian infrastructure facilities, energy, transport hubs, and decision-making centers. Such an operation, according to some sources, has received the provisional name Zeus Lightning, may be connected with the course of diplomatic negotiations. Its goal is to force Kyiv to accept Russian conditions under the threat of the conflict moving into the most severe and fleeting phase. This information was published on Kremlin-funded and controlled outlet Tsargrad on May 31st, one day before Ukraine's Operation Spiderweb. The article was then deleted on June 1st, once Russia lost one-third of its strategic bomber fleet, with Russia's operation for that night aborted. The largest air-launched missile attack on Ukraine took place on December 29, 2023. That day, Russian aircraft, including the very bombers Ukraine destroyed yesterday, launched at least 108 air-to-ground missiles of various types, murdering 58 and injuring over 160 civilians. If Russia planned its largest missile attack on Ukraine for the night before the Istanbul talks, Operation Spiderweb's destruction of bombers hours before takeoff prevented devastating mass casualties among civilians and incalculable destruction of infrastructure across Ukraine. This is what we would call good timing. And the battles are raging. FPV drone operators of the Signum Battalion, 53rd Mechanized Brigade, skillfully navigated beneath Russian nets stretched over a key logistics route. Despite heavy fire, the drone operator successfully destroyed a Russian Bukhanka vehicle along with its crew. The Russian Bukhanka, meaning loaf of bread in Russian due to its rounded, boxy shape, is a nickname for the UAZ-452, a rugged Soviet-era off-road van produced by the Ulyanovsk Automobile Plant, UAZ. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham warned, "If this war ends as if we abandoned Ukraine, it will be even worse than our withdrawal from Afghanistan." He emphasized that such a scenario would deal a serious blow to global stability. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on new U.S. sanctions against Russia. The president has spoken about his position on sanctions on Russia. He has smartly kept this as a tool in his toolbox if necessary.
Does the president support the Senate moving forward with a bill imposing heavy sanctions on Russia?
Look, the president has spoken about his position on sanctions on Russia. He has smartly kept this as a tool in his toolbox if necessary, but I think the Senate and everyone on Capitol Hill respects the president is the commander-in-chief for a reason. And as you know, Russia and Ukraine engaged in direct talks yesterday. That was at the encouragement of this president when he spoke to both leaders of both countries via phone just a couple of weeks ago. And so I would just like to remind everybody how far we have come in just 4 months. I mean, it was inconceivable last year at this time for Russia and Ukraine to be engaged in direct talks. And it's because of the president's insistence and determination to get this war to an end that these countries sat down yesterday. So he's willing to use sanctions if he needs them, and the Senate and the Capitol Hill understand that the president is the commander-in-chief and he's leading United States foreign policy as he should.
A third round of talks between Ukraine and Russia could take place by the end of the month, but only if there are no more attacks on strategic aviation airfields, says Alexei Chepa, first deputy head of the Russian Duma's Foreign Affairs Committee. He also claims Ukraine should accept Russia's proposed 2 to 3 day ceasefire on certain parts of the front. So Russia started the fight, and now they say, "We will talk if you don't fight back." Clowns. And Russia is doing what it does best: terrorism. Russians launched a massive overnight attack with Shahed drones on Odessa, Chernihiv, and the Kharkiv region. Unfortunately, there are casualties and injuries. Private and residential buildings were destroyed, cars, businesses, and infrastructure facilities were burned down. Ukraine focuses its attacks on legitimate military targets, ammunition depots, command centers, and troop concentrations, using precision weapons to weaken Russia's ability to wage war. In contrast, Russia frequently retaliates by striking Ukrainian civilian infrastructure, apartment buildings, schools, hospitals, and power stations. These deliberate attacks on non-combatants are not only war crimes, but also highlight the Kremlin's strategy of terrorizing the population rather than confronting Ukrainian forces on the battlefield. A Russian student with cerebral palsy has been sentenced to 12 years in a maximum security prison for treason after he sent a €33 online donation to Ukraine, Russian independent media reported. 21-year-old Andrei Glukov, a second-year student at the Volgograd Polytechnic College, was arrested after a September 2024 search of the apartment he shared with his mother. The Russian Federal Security Service seized computer equipment and interrogated him, later detaining him in October. According to his father, Eduard Glukov, the young man spent most of his time at home and had limited mobility, with his arm and leg affected by his condition. The court ruling was handed down on May 29th, following a one-month trial. Glukov was convicted under Article 275 of Russia's Criminal Code, which covers treason. In an interview with independent news outlet Media Zona, his father, Eduard Glukov, said that Andrei's right arm and leg don't work well. Eduard said that his son opposed Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and came into contact online with someone who claimed to be Ukrainian. The acquaintance allegedly encouraged donations to support peace efforts and provided a bank account number in Ukraine. Twice for 1,500 rubles, 16.6 euros, my son says he transferred it. And that's it, he said. Since the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Russian authorities have broadened the use of treason laws and imposed severe penalties for actions viewed as aiding the enemy, including online statements and humanitarian donations. The case has drawn criticism from independent Russian media and human rights observers, who say it exemplifies the use of extreme charges for minor actions viewed as sympathetic to Ukraine. Legal experts and rights groups have raised concerns about the prosecution of vulnerable individuals under harsh wartime legislation, particularly when charges rely on limited evidence or minimal actions.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comments section. The membership link is in the description.
Every day. We had a guy last week, it's 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.